Hey guys, it's Delora Dabbles here, and today we are going to be reviewing Changeling, a book of qualities by Aiden Wachter. So this book is very different from his other books, and we'll get into that. Let's look at the table of contents together. As you notice, every 2 pages or so, you have another section, and they're numbered, but these aren't chapters. They're kind of more like prompts. He talks about, in his introduction, let me make sure that you guys get to see the praxis section, because we'll get into that too. In the introduction, this introduction is it's a pretty big introduction, several pages long. And he also talks about how you can kind of use this book a bit like an I Ching as well, but like a witchcraft I Ching. So if you're going through something, do like a random number generator from 1 to 55 and just see what it lands on, right? And there are a lot of journaling prompts in each of these 1 through 55s, right? So let me show you those. So for instance, in section 1, a witch seeks power, there's also a poem as well. And I kind of like his poems as I'm going through it. So this one is power I seek, power and wisdom, power and vision, power and grace, power in my blood, power in my words, power in my hands, and the marks I make. So it's kind of cool. You get, some of them have a practice section as well, which kind of gives you like, this one, for instance, is a cleansing bath. So different ones will have a practice and some of them won't have a practice. Some of them will have questions and some of them won't have questions. Basically, if they are very, very similar to the section that came before it or the section that's coming after it, there won't be as much practice or questions, right? And I kind of like that because it cuts out a lot of redundancy that you might feel if you're a completionist who wants to do all of the things. I'm starting to journal out of this book. I say starting because I'm only on section 8 of this book. I come and go whenever it comes to things like journaling. I'll take very, very long breaks, and I have been in the middle of a break with this book, but I digress. So the questions in this one would be, who would you be if you fully accepted your power? How would your life change if you did so? How do you think other people will respond to you if you are fully in your power? Do you think you will like yourself when you fully inhabit your power? Do you deserve to be powerful? And so a lot of these questions deal with self-esteem. They deal with, a lot of hypotheticals, right? Because there are a lot of people who, grow up in abusive environments, such as myself, who are very scared to draw attention to yourself because anytime you did something really phenomenal, the abuser would feel the need to knock you down a peg. And so you learn that if I do phenomenal things and if I am an amazing person and I'm in my power, it will only fuel the abuser to take that power away and to further beat me down, right? And so you learn how to close in on yourself and to not be powerful. And that is an extreme example, right? Certainly, this happens in a metaphysical way. For instance, whenever I was a very young child and I was seeing spirits, and it really freaked my parents out. And even as a 4 or 5-year-old child, I felt that they were confused, didn't know what was happening with me, and that scared them. It then in turn scared me, right? If I had had more spiritually empowered parents, then they would have known exactly what was happening, and that I was talking to spirits and that wasn't a bad thing. But because I internalized it as a bad thing because I knew my parents were scared and eventually scared of me, it got weird. And so I shut that power off. My grandmother was also schizophrenic and was extremely paranoid about me knowing things that I shouldn't know because I was speaking to spirits. And there's a whole lot of things going on with that relationship. And so there were a lot of reasons why I shut down the way that I did. Anywho, that was probably a really, really good area to start on for his book, and talking about power and what power means, because a lot of us have problems with power, especially if, living in America, we live a very impoverished lifestyle, or if we are a minority of literally any kind. Our society here in America has a way of beating us down when we're different in any way, shape, or form, or disadvantaged in any way, shape, or form. And so I thought that was a really good place to start. But in the journaling phase, it was a very intense place to start. A lot of these questions also have to do with self-esteem. And that is a trend that continues. For instance, the last question that I mentioned was, do you deserve to be powerful? Right? He could have said, do you believe you deserve to be powerful? Or do you think that you deserve to be powerful? But he asked it as an absolute. Do you deserve to be powerful? And I feel like by stating it in such a direct and unconvoluted way, it really does make you have to combat those self-esteem issues that you might have. You'd be surprised how many magical practitioners, when they start getting results, start immediately having a, what is it called when you believe something for so long and then there's evidence that a lot of people get this way about politics. What is that word? Oh my God. But you guys know what I'm talking about. It's like you go through that. You're like, wait, no, I was the weird kid. I was bullied. I was this, I was that. I cannot believe that this magic is working and that everything in my life is perfectly fine. And if you don't believe that you deserve it, what are you going to start doing? You're going to start self-sabotaging, right? Anyway, moving on. He has a lot of, before we get into practice, the poems, the questions, and things like that, he gives at least a page, sometimes between a page and 2 pages. He gives an entire list, he describes in detail the topic that he's talking about, such as a witch knows how to let go. And he's talking about letting go of trauma and things like that. This is what makes this book a lot more of like a therapy workbook vibe to me than anything having to do with witchcraft, which was confusing when you bought it, thinking that it was about spirituality. And then you get into it and you're like, no, it's therapy, right? My dad just came home. This is so awkward. He hates anything to do with witchcraft. I'm going to pause this for a bit. Yeah. Okay, so I've moved outside to finish this real fast for you guys. It's a little bit awkward because the puppers are all over me. They're like, she's never out here. I'm like, yes, I know I'm never out here. Hello. So they get excited when I come out here. Anyway, as I was saying, this is a lot like a therapy book. And one of the biggest tenets in any spiritual practice is know thyself, right? So even if you feel like, I haven't had a lot of trauma, I don't have low self-esteem, you can still get a lot out of this book because you should know yourself. And I love Josephine McCarthy, and she says that the very act of doing spiritual practices helps you to become a more stable, well-rounded person, right? And she says there are a lot of people who don't get into spirituality because they have depression or anxiety, right? And she's like, that's a cop-out. That's you holding yourself back. Just the act of doing will help you with those issues. And I totally believe that. That has definitely been something that grounded me in my therapy, right? Because in therapy, you dig up a lot of stuff that you'd rather not talk about or deal with, a lot of emotions you'd rather not deal with or feel. And so definitely being able to meditate and things like that when I get home from therapy has been immensely important. And a really good therapist will actually do a closing exercise, which is a visualization exercise. Mine was, she was like, think of a vessel to hold these emotions in until we meet again. What does this vessel look like? I want you to describe it to me, and I want you to imagine where you put this vessel. And so we set that up, and then after every tough therapy session, she would read back my visualization to me while I had my eyes closed and imagining it. So visualization meditations are used a lot by very good trauma therapists anyway. And so that brings us to the next section, right? Because we've talked about the first section with the numbers 1 through 55 of the different like tenets, I guess you could say. The second is the praxis section, and he talks about the importance of actually doing the work, right? He has the section, the year, the moon, and sacred time, which is exactly what it sounds like. The importance of moon cycles when you do certain meditations or spell crafting during the phases of the moon. The 4 roads, which is about the 4 elements, right? And then we have the arts of asking, which is basically the section of the book that has all the different spells in it. There are protection spells. There's a lot of explanations, like what spells are, how they work. And I love Aiden Wachter, and I love being able to read his stuff because he describes things so intensely, right? Like he gets to a deeper level than what most books do. And even though he's not using a ton of words, he's very concise, as I've said in other book reviews. It is immensely helpful, right? And I love the little subsection, A Witch's Logic, right? It really describes how all this is, how everything works, right? And of course, his closing thoughts, as always, are very thoughtful. Things won't always be like this. You can remake yourself, and in so doing, remake the world. You can heal yourself, and in so doing, heal the world. There is a path to that place. It is a road you can walk. I see that you are on that road. Good hunting. And whenever I feel myself losing motivation in this book, I will reread that last paragraph in his closing thoughts, or his entire closing thoughts, and it will give me the motivation to keep going. Because again, when you're dredging things up and you realize how, even though you've done so much therapy, right, you still have issues, this book is just immensely helpful. If you know a practitioner in your life, or even someone who's thinking, or just is spiritual, this is an amazing book to get them. Because unlike other therapy books, I have the Self-Esteem Workbook. I believe it's by Glenn Schiraldi. And in the very first section, it wants you to start working out and change your diet for an entire week, and then start working on the workbook. I was like, if I have extremely low self-esteem like I did years and years ago, how am I going to build up the motivation to make those positive changes, right? You have to help me first before I can do that, right? It's just a complete and total lack of touch. This definitely, Aiden Wachter has dealt with things, traumatic things, before, because he wrote this book in such a compassionate way and in such a helpful way. And I definitely think that blending spirituality with any kind of therapeutic practice is going to make it so much better. Whether you follow a specific religion or you're just a spiritual person, incorporating those beliefs into your therapy is what's going to make that therapy pop and help you make lasting changes. And finally, I have a recommendation for spiritual and witchy people, right, on how to bring that into their therapy. And I hope that you guys enjoyed this book review. If you did, please hit like and subscribe. You'll really help my channel grow. If you have this book and you have enjoyed it, I would love to know in your own words in the comment section exactly how it has helped you and what you liked most about the book, right? And until next time, happy reading, happy dabbling, and bye-bye.